Silence is a kind of job. People think it's passive, like you're just not talking, like you're doing nothing. But silence takes work. You have to keep your face normal when the hallway goes quiet in that ugly way. You have to keep your keys in your pocket. You have to keep your mouth shut when somebody looks at you like you're the last door between them and whatever's coming. But I did. I learned the sound of it in our building on Markham Road, Scarborough. Quiet. Not downtown quiet. The kind where you can hear the elevator cable twitch. The kind where every footstep turns into a question. Who's out there? It started as a decision that felt smart. I wasn't the landlord. I wasn't the one raising the rent. I wasn't the one changing the locks. I was just the superintendent, the guy who did the garbage, the snow, the maintenance requests, the little repairs nobody respects until their toilet doesn't flush. And when I stayed quiet, it worked. At first, I thought silence was safer. But silence doesn't stay empty. It fills up. It becomes a hallway camera you pretend you didn't check, a voicemail you never got, a door you don't open, a set of rules you enforce like you wrote them. Silence turns you into infrastructure. The building wasn't fancy. It was one of those aging rentals where the lobby always smells like wet boots and somebody's burnt cooking. The management company's logo was on a flimsy sign by the mailboxes, like that meant anything. People still called it the building on Markham, like it was a person. I lived in the basement unit that gave the super cheap rent. No sunlight, a constant hum from the boiler room like the building was breathing. I liked that. It made me feel tucked away, protected, invisible. That was my thing. Invisibility. I was 36, divorced, and I've been broke enough times to know exactly how quickly good guy turns into guy sleeping in his car. I'd done security, warehouse, a couple shifts at a bar where I learned to hate drunk optimism. I didn't believe in fairness. I believed in leverage. I believed in rules, because rules are just leverage you can pretend is neutral. When I started as the super, it was simple. Fix things, collect complaints, forward them to the office. Keep the peace. Don't get attached. Then came Dahlia. She moved in on a Monday with 2 suitcases and a trash bag full of clothes. Not a lot of furniture. No boyfriend carrying boxes. No loud family helping. Just her and a kid, maybe 9, holding a phone like it was a life raft. She had that look some newcomers have. Eyes up. Shoulders tight. Polite voice stretched over panic. The kind that makes people want to either help you or use you. Sometimes both. I didn't know her whole story at first. I knew the basics because the leasing office loved gossip like it was a perk. Unit 1408, the property manager told me, smirking like we were sharing a joke. Single mom. Refugee claim pending. You know how it is. That property manager, Brendan, was the kind of man who wore dress shoes that never touched real dirt. He had a smile that said, "I'm reasonable," and eyes that said, "I'll crush you if I need to." He'd worked the system long enough to talk like a brochure and move like a knife. "You'll keep an eye," he added. Not a question. That should have been my first sign. Keep an eye is what people say when they want you to do something ugly but don't want the words in their mouth. I told myself it wasn't my business. I told myself I didn't care. I told myself, this is important. I told myself I was better than the tenants. Not because I had money, I didn't, but because I had keys. Keys do something to your brain if you let them. They make you think you're above the people who need you. Dahlia came down to the office the first week because her intercom wasn't working. "My son's father sends money sometimes," she said, careful. "But he needs to visit. I need the buzzer." She said needs like she was asking permission. I went up with my tool bag and fixed it in 5 minutes. A loose wire, nothing dramatic. While I worked, her kid sat at the kitchen table doing homework in silence. The apartment was too clean. No clutter, no mess, no sense of people living there, like she was afraid to take up space. "When I left," she said, "thank you so much. Really. I nodded, like it was nothing. But I felt something warm in my chest, the power of being necessary. 2 weeks later, Brendan called me into the leasing office. "We've got a situation," he said. He always said it like we were teammates, like we had the same goal. He spun his monitor around. It was a spreadsheet of tenants and arrears. "Unit 1408 is behind already. She just moved in," I said. "She paid first and last. That's all we got," Brendan replied. Like that settled it. "She's already asking for a payment plan. She's already circling, like she was a shark, like she wasn't a woman with a child." "What do you want me to do?" I asked, even though I knew. My stomach did that small tightening thing it does when I'm about to agree to something I'll pretend I didn't understand. "I want you to stop being so friendly," he said. "Don't fix little extras. Follow the book, and if she starts asking questions, keep it vague, keep it calm, keep it quiet." Quiet. There it was. He leaned back, hands folded. "These claims, these people, they'll turn one small accommodation into an entitlement. We're not running a charity." I remember the content in his voice, because it matched something in me that I didn't want to admit existed. A mean little part of it's in the peak. So I said, "Okay." That's how it started. Not with a punch, not with a threat. Just a man telling another man to be quiet. The next time Dahlia asked for something, her mailbox key had gone missing in the office. I told her I'd look into it, and didn't. The mail piled up in the office bin. She came down every day, polite at first, then shaky, then angry, in a way she tried to swallow before it showed. "Please," she said one afternoon, voice thin, "I am waiting on important letters." "Could be delayed," I told her. "Canada Post is slow sometimes." It was bullshit, and we both knew it. She stared at me, eyes wet but hard. "You have it," she said quietly. I shrugged. "I don't." That was my first real why. It landed in my mouth like metal. And here's the sick part. I liked it. I liked that I could do it. I liked that she couldn't force the truth out of me. I liked the little tremor of control. Over the next month, Brendan escalated in small, legal-looking ways. Notices on her door, inspections scheduled during school pickup hours, calls that went unanswered, emails that bounced, a second notice, a third. And every time she came to me, every time she tried to use my face as a shortcut to humanity, I gave her the same thing. A blank look, a calm tone, a shrug, silence. I told myself I wasn't hurting her. I told myself Brendan was just doing his job. I told myself she should have had more money before she signed a lease. I told myself a lot of things that sounded logical if you didn't say them out loud. And then her son, Micah, started waiting in the lobby after school. He'd sit by the mailboxes, backpack on, watching the door like he was guarding something. Sometimes he'd glance at the security camera dome above the entrance like he knew it mattered. One day he said, "Do you have our mail?" I looked at him and felt a flicker of disgust. Not at him, but at how it made me feel. Like I was being held accountable by a child. "I don't know," I said. His face tightened. He didn't cry. He just nodded like he was logging the answer in his brain, like he was learning what adults are. That night in my basement unit, I drank cheap beer and told myself it wasn't my fault. I told myself if I helped her, I'd get fired. I told myself Brendan would replace me with some other guy who wouldn't even hesitate. And then I told myself the truth, the one I didn't like. I wasn't staying quiet because I was scared. I was staying quiet because it made me feel above her. And that contempt, that small, sour satisfaction, started eating through everything. At work, it made my posture straighter. It made my voice colder. It made me enforce rules like they were holy scripture. No loitering, no extra garbage bags, no overnight guests without being registered, no unauthorized repairs. One day she came down frantic, phone in her hand, showing me screenshots of messages. "He says he will report me," she whispered. "My son's father. He says if I don't do what he wants, he will call immigration." I knew right then how deep she was in it. Not just rent, not just paperwork, an entire system of leverage pressing down on her throat. And I still said, "That's not our business." She stared at me like I'd slapped her. "You are human," she said, voice breaking. "You are not." "Watch your tone," I snapped. My own voice surprised me, sharp, mean. The lobby camera watched us. She flinched, and I felt a rush. Hot, nasty, immediate. Hour. I went back downstairs after she left and laughed to myself like it was nothing. Like I was some kind of hardened man who couldn't be manipulated by tears. In my head, I was proud of how detached I was. That detachment didn't feel like coldness yet. It felt like control. The more you stay quiet, the more people treat you like a safe container for their plans. That's what Brendan saw in me. A man who wouldn't complicate things with feelings. A man who'd nod, do the task, shut up. He started giving me little instructions. Don't answer her calls after hours. Log every complaint she makes. Make sure she doesn't use the laundry room after 10. Keep an eye on who visits her. And he said it all like it was about the building, about order, about fairness. But it wasn't. It was about pressure, about isolating a person until the world feels smaller than their fear. The first time I actively helped him, not just through silence, was the day of the inspection. Dahlia got the notice for 9:00 a.m. I knew because I taped it on her door myself while she was at work. I stood there in the hallway, listening to the quiet behind the door, and I remember thinking, this is what power looks like. Doing things to people when they aren't even there. At 8:45, Brendan showed up with a clipboard and a locksmith. I raised an eyebrow. "Locksmith?" Brendan smiled. "Just in case." "In case of what? A missed appointment? A woman trying to keep strangers out of her home?" The idea made my stomach turn, but I didn't say it. I didn't ask. I didn't challenge him. Silence. We knocked. No answer. Brendan checked his watch like he was disappointed on purpose. "Well," he said loudly, in the hallway where the sound carried, "we made a good faith effort." The locksmith looked at me like he wasn't comfortable. I could tell he'd done this before and hated it every time. But he still took out his tools. Brendan leaned close to me and murmured, "If she's not here, we document. If she's hiding something, we document. Either way, we win." Win. Like it was a game. The lock clicked. The door opened. Inside, the apartment still looked too clean. Not well kept. More like afraid to leave a trace. Brendan walked through, taking pictures of mundane things like they were evidence. A cracked tile, a slightly stained baseboard, a stack of unpaid bills on the counter. And then he opened the bedroom closet. There were men's clothes in there, a jacket, a pair of shoes. Nothing dramatic. Brendan's eyes lit up. Well, he said softly, "so she's got help." "It could be her brother," I said automatically. Brendan turned to me, smiling like I was adorable. "Don't be naive." He took more photos. That's when I realized the inspection was never about the apartment. It was about finding anything that could be shaped into a story. Later, when Dahlia came home and saw the entry notice slipped under her door, our little paper justification, she came down to the office shaking. Her face was pale, eyes wild, like the world had cracked while she was out buying groceries. "You went in," she said. "It was scheduled," I replied. "You didn't call me. You didn't." Her voice pitched higher. "My son. What if my son was alone?" "He wasn't," I said, because I knew he'd been at school. And the way I said it, calm and flat, made her look at me like I was a stranger. She slammed her palm on the counter. Where is my mail? I had the key in my drawer. I'd had it for weeks. Brendan told me to hold it. He said it kept her dependent on office contact, and he liked that. He liked controlling her access to the outside world, like it was a faucet. I could have handed it to her then, and ended at least one part of the cruelty. Instead, I stared at her and said, I'll check. She cursed under her breath, raw, not polite. The kind of curse you say when your body can't contain your fear anymore. It made my cheeks flush, not with shame, but with irritation. Like she'd broken the rules of being grateful. And then I did something worse than staying quiet. I wrote her up. I documented aggressive behavior and emailed it to Brendan. I used official language. Tenant became escalated. Staff felt unsafe. Like that made it true. Like bureaucracy could scrub the moral stain off my hands. That night, Brendan called me, pleased. Good, he said. Now we've got a pattern. A pattern. I didn't sleep well after that, but not because I felt guilty. Because I felt exposed. Like the act of writing it down meant my silence had finally turned into a signature. I started noticing things I hadn't let myself notice before. How Dahlia's friends stopped visiting. How she stopped talking in the hallway. How she kept her head down, like the building itself was watching her. How Micah stopped sitting in the lobby and started coming straight to the basement stairwell, knocking on my door softly like he was afraid. One evening, he knocked when I was watching TV. I opened the door just enough to see his face. My mom says don't talk to you, he said. I laughed once, short and bitter. Smart. He stared past me into my unit like he was trying to understand what kind of man lived underground. She's crying, he said, a lot. I felt something then, not sympathy, more like annoyance that her pain was leaking into my life. Like I'd agreed to be quiet and now the consequences were getting loud. Go upstairs, I told him. He didn't move. He swallowed hard. Do you know if we're going to get kicked out? That question hit me in the chest like a shove. Not because I cared about justice, because I knew the answer. Brendan had already drafted the paperwork. He'd told me. He'd said, if she doesn't comply, we'll proceed. Comply? With what? With being scared? With not making noise? With letting the building swallow her? I looked at Micah and felt my contempt twist into something uglier. Contempt for myself. Because a child should not have to ask a basement man if his life is about to collapse. And still, I said, I don't know. That was the infrastructure. That was me turning fear into policy. Later that week, Brendan escalated again. He started misplacing her maintenance requests. Her heat cut out overnight during a cold snap. She called the emergency line. I saw the missed call. I watched it ring on my phone while I sat on my couch, beer in hand, and I didn't answer. I told myself, it's after hours. I told myself, she'll call the city. I told myself, not my problem. In the morning, she came down furious. My son slept in a coat, she said, voice shaking. What the fuck is wrong with you? I snapped. The words came out hard and mean and full of the venom I'd been storing. You think you're special, I said. You think this building revolves around you? You're behind on rent, you're causing problems, and you've got people coming and going like it's a shelter. Fix your shit. Her face went still. Not calm. Dead. And then she said, very softly, you are enjoying this. That was the first time someone named it, enjoying, like it wasn't a mistake, or confusion, or bureaucracy, like it was pleasure. My skin prickled. I felt a surge of anger, and shame, and something else, something like arousal at being seen, even in hatred. It was disgusting, and it was real. I leaned forward and hissed, get the fuck out of this office. There it is. Multiple curse words. The ugly temperature rising. She backed away. She didn't yell. She didn't plead. She just nodded, like she was learning exactly what kind of world she was in. When she left, I locked the office door and sat there breathing hard, hands shaking. I told myself I'd done the right thing. I told myself I'd defended order. I told myself I was the one in control. But my chest felt tight in a way that didn't go away, because her sentence kept echoing in my head. You are enjoying this. And the worst part was, I couldn't fully deny it. The corrosion didn't arrive like a storm. It arrived like rust, quiet, patient, spreading under the surface until everything you touch leaves a stain. It started with the cameras. Our building had those cheap dome cameras in the lobby and hallways. Brendan loved them. He'd say things like, "Cameras don't lie," like the person controlling the footage didn't exist. One afternoon, Brendan called me into the office and played a clip. It was Dahlia in the lobby, talking to a woman I didn't recognize, older, wearing a winter coat and a scarf, holding a folder. They stood by the mailboxes. Dahlia's hands were shaking as she pointed at the office door. She brought help, Brendan said, voice tight. Legal clinic, I guessed. Brendan's jaw worked. She thinks she can embarrass us. Embarrass. That word mattered. Not sue, not report. Embarrass. Like reputation was the real currency. He turned to me. We need to control contact. What do you mean? I asked, though I already felt the answer forming like bile. We can't stop her from getting advice, Brendan said, but we can make her look unstable. We can document. We can encourage distance. Encourage distance. Social isolation dressed up as strategy. He slid a paper toward me, an internal memo. It listed interaction guidelines for staff. Communicate only through written channels. Avoid unnecessary engagement. Redirect all concerns to management. Then he added the part he didn't write down. If she approaches other tenants, you shut it down, he said. If she starts telling stories, you remind people not to get involved. Nobody wants drama. You keep the building calm. That's how you isolate someone in a place like this. You don't lock them in a room. You make everyone around them decide they don't want the trouble. And I, because I'd built my whole identity around being calm, being invisible, being reasonable, I did it. I started telling people in the hallway, don't get mixed up in her issues. I started saying, management's handling it. I started warning, she's trying to stir things up. I said it with a small smile, like we were sharing common sense. I watched doors close behind her. I watched neighbors stop making eye contact. I watched a woman on the 14th floor pretend not to hear Dahlia knocking. And every time, I told myself it wasn't cruelty. It was order. Then the recording happened. It was a Thursday evening, late winter, slush everywhere. Dahlia came into the lobby with Micah and that older woman again. The woman had the folder, and she moved with the steady confidence of someone who knows how systems work. They approached the office. I was behind the counter, pretending to sort work orders. Hello, the woman said. My name is Janice Patel. I'm assisting Ms. Laurent of the tenancy matter. Laurent. That was Dahlia's last name. I realized I'd never said it in my head before. I'd kept her as Unit 1408 because numbers are easier to hurt. Janice continued, calm. We're requesting access to withheld mail and documentation related to entries and inspections. I felt the key in my drawer like it was burning. I could have ended it right there. Hand it over. Apologize. Say, I'm sorry, I was told, something, anything. Instead, my mouth did what it had learned. It produced silence shaped like policy. You'll have to contact management, I said. Janice nodded once. We have. We're also requesting that you provide your name for our records. My throat tightened. Why? Because you are the staff member involved, she replied. It's routine. Routine. Like she wasn't here to fight, like she was here to document. Dahlia stood beside her, face blank, eyes dead in that same way from before. Micah held his phone up, not obviously, but enough. Something in my gut dropped. "Are you recording?" I snapped. Micah's eyes widened. Dahlia didn't move. Janice stayed calm. "In Ontario, one-party consent applies," she said evenly. "This is a record of our interaction." One-party consent. She said it like it was weather, like it wasn't going to change my life. I felt rage surge up, caught, panicked, humiliating. I felt exposed, like my silence had been ripped open and there was nothing inside it but rot. "Turn that off," I said. "This is private property. You can't just—" Janice didn't flinch. "We can, and we are." The profanity spilled out before I could stop it, ugly and fast, an entire paragraph of it, because the fear was finally louder than my discipline. "This is fucking bullshit," I hissed, leaning forward. "You come in here with your little fucking folder and your fucking phone like you're gonna scare me? You think you're gonna ruin my job over some stupid fucking mail? Get the fuck out of here before I call security." Micah flinched. Dahlia's face didn't change. Janice said quietly, "Thank you. That's very helpful." That sentence, "very helpful," hit harder than any insult. Because she wasn't reacting emotionally. She was collecting me. Brendan arrived 10 minutes later, breathless, wearing his calm face like armor. He pulled Janice aside, spoke low, hands open, reasonable. He offered a meeting, a timeline, a resolution. And Dahlia, still blank, just watched him. I watched her too, and I realized something that made my skin crawl. She wasn't afraid of him anymore. She was done. That night, Brendan called me. "What the hell did you say?" he demanded. I told him the truth. Some of it. I admitted I'd cursed. I admitted there was a recording. There was a pause on the line. Then Brendan's voice went colder. "You were supposed to stay quiet." I laughed once, sharp and bitter. "That's rich." He didn't laugh back. "Do you understand what this could do?" "To you," I said. The words came out before I could stop them. "To you." Another pause. Then he said very carefully, "I don't think you understand how replaceable you are." There it was, my self-delusion cracking. I'd thought my silence made me valuable. I thought being the quiet man meant protection. But silence doesn't buy loyalty. It buys use. 2 days later, the management company placed me on administrative leave, pending review. Brendan wouldn't meet my eyes in the hallway. He moved like I didn't exist. The legal clinic sent a letter. The landlord and tenant board was mentioned. My name was in it. My statements. My behavior. The withheld mail. The missed emergency heat call. Everything I'd kept quiet was now written down. And then the tenants started looking at me differently. Not with fear. With recognition. It wasn't dramatic. It was small things. The woman on the 9th floor who used to smile, now turning her head away. The guy who always said, "Hey, boss," now staring straight through me. The building's quiet, changing shape. A week later, I saw Micah in the lobby. He didn't avoid me. He didn't look scared. He looked disappointed, like I'd failed a test I didn't know I was taking. Dahlia stood behind him, talking to Janice. She didn't look at me, not once. That was worse than hatred. Hatred would have meant I still mattered as a person. I went back to my basement unit and sat in the dim light, listening to the boiler hum. I thought about how proud I'd been, how safe, how invisible. But now I could feel the truth under my skin. I wasn't invisible. I was a mechanism. A lock. A gate. A quiet man with keys who made the hallway smaller for someone else. And the consequence wasn't just losing the job. It was the way my own mind started playing back the moments I'd shrugged, lied, ignored, documented, insulted. The way my contempt, my precious detachment, had turned into something sticky and corrosive I couldn't rinse off. Brendan texted me once, weeks later. Don't mention my name. Handle your own situation. Handle my own situation. Like I hadn't been handling his for months. Now I had no role, no keys, no policy to hide behind. Just my voice, finally forced to speak, except nobody wanted to hear it. And the worst part, the part that traps me, is this. I still catch myself craving that old silence, that clean, empty feeling of not my problem. I still miss the moment of power, when someone begged and I could shrug. I still feel that sick little spark, pleasure, superiority, like a rot that survived the fire. I thought silence was safer, but silence didn't protect me. Well, it made me the whole way.